Hi, this is Christina West with Christina West Art. Today's topic is going to be about art and healing. And we're going to talk today about karma, the consequences of our actions, or even the consequences of our non-actions. When we refuse to do something, what's the karma of that? A few years ago, I was talking with a friend, and we were discussing the subject of people who have good or bad karma, or good luck and bad luck. She said to me that if people had bad karma, she felt it was somehow their fault and that they had to deal with it on their own. Using sort of New Age ideas, this somehow let her off the hook entirely from the situation. Frankly, it sounded heartless. Rudolf Steiner, the great seer and scientist, spiritual scientist, states, The teaching of karma signifies for life in the world that which the ledger signifies for the merchant. According to the law of karma, we must assume that the effect of what I have done in a former life approaches me in the present life, and that what I now will do will come forth again in a later life. Thus, we have a complete life balance. On the one side, the good deeds that are entered, and on the other side, the bad ones. Now, if someone believes that under the dominion of the law of karma, he or she cannot perform any voluntary acts, as her mode of acting is always the result of her former deeds, she is like a merchant who would say, I have just balanced my books. I cannot do any more business, for this would make my balance sheet incorrect. For the merchant, this would be a wrong way of thinking, and the opinion we have described above in the respect of karma is equally incorrect. When rightly understood, the teaching of karma is not fatalistic. Freedom of will and karma can be united with one another in the most beautiful manner. When rightly understood, karma is never something that is unchangeable. And if a man refused to help another in his misfortune, saying that he must not interfere with his karma, he would be acting just as wrongly as a merchant who refuses a loan or a gift of a sum of money when this could save him from bankruptcy. Just as the merchant enters a loan like this as a debt, which he has to pay later, while the lender writes it down in his books as a loan, so will the one who does a good deed write it as an entry to his credit, while he whom it is done will write it down as a debt. Thus the rendering of help is not excluded by the law of karma, and it does seem quite in order to lighten the karma of one's neighbor by deeds of mutual help. A man can, by his good deeds, show kindness to one of his fellow man. But there are also deeds that can benefit a large number of people. That is to say, it can lighten their karma and can thus be inscribed in the life account of many. We have all heard the term, you create your reality, meaning that if you are thin and rich and good-looking, then brava. You have created the life that almost everyone is striving for. Multi-billions of dollars are marketed to help sufferers who are not quite thin enough or rich enough or good-looking, thousands of products to help you get there. On the flip side, if your current reality is struggle or fear-based, challenging, you might be dealing with financial debt, ill health, and your children are running amok. In fact, you are not the Facebook happy selfie of you and the happy spouse. Then there is the unsaid thing. Well, you are creating your own reality. I guess that's how you want to live. Or, you must deserve this. And going further into selfishness, I'm not going to mess with their karma. It's theirs to fix. Are we refusing helping others because it's their karma? Hey friend, can you lend me a hand? Again, Rudolf Steiner addresses this issue. Now, someone might come along and say, it is quite right that things should have gone wrong for that person, for this is the retribution for what he or she did in the past incarnation. It is very reasonable that things should have taken this course because their karma demands it. People who say this do not understand karma. For to understand karma, we must know that another person's karma does not concern us at all. The fulfillment of karma will come of its own accord. Our only task is to help our friends, to help them. We must, however, draw in everything that might bring about a favorable change in their karma. To know this and to feel this forms part of a deep understanding of karma and its laws. Karma is a real law. The results will appear in a very peculiar way. If we lovingly penetrate into the weakness of such people, our influence upon them will be an immense relief to them and bring them freedom and health. If we can immerse ourselves completely in them, we shall have a rejuvenating influence on such people. Our attitudes towards people may be an understanding one or a critical one. What is that effect? We may help them or be unable to help them. We may come towards a person with understanding, immerse ourselves lovingly in their soul with a real understanding for their weakness, if karma demands this from us as a task. But we may also criticize them and remain bound by this. Let us observe life in both cases. What is the effect of criticism and rebuke upon the object of such rebuke? One effect can be that the reproaches help them, but it also may be otherwise. People who habitually criticize and rebuke others will also bring about a certain result. A certain feeling of isolation will take hold of them, and they will feel themselves cut off from others. Let us compare this with the effects produced in one incarnation when we immerse ourselves with love and understanding in the other person's soul, despite their failings. In this case, too, the result may be good or a bad one, but the effect upon the soul will undoubtedly be a favorable one. This shows us that entirely different laws hold sway when we remain standing, as it were, by criticism and rebuke, or when we progress as far as real understanding. Rebuke recoils upon ourselves and forms new karma, but understanding gives rise to a store of wealth in the soul. It dissolves karma, smooths it, and eliminates it. This is a very significant fact in life. Let us now recapitulate the result of our observations in a sentence which constitutes a deep truth, namely, that we are in the position to be of very little help to ourselves, and that we can, on the other hand, harm ourselves greatly. We can, however, be a great help to others, whereas we cannot cause them much harm by our own errors. ERRORS. Our good qualities can therefore be of great help to others. Our bad qualities can cause us great harm, but cannot cause much harm to others, at least not permanently. This is a very peculiar law. It shows how the effect of karma in one and the same incarnation, for one who helps another person by his good qualities and by immersing himself lovingly in his soul, may be sure of a favorable effect in his own life at some later period. Do not say this is egotism, that it's selfish to be good and noble. No, goodness must be something quite natural, and its good effect at some time later arises as a natural consequence. If we do not go beyond our own interests, if we have no understanding for other people and only criticize them, no good effects will arise. The strange thing is that unless we are good towards others, we cannot progress. This is a condition for our own progress. Attached to this blog, I put a number of pictures of installation and performance art by Nick Cave, Nick Cave. He's a performance artist. And in it, he's actually in the costume he created, and he looks like he's somewhat falling or he can't maintain his balance. And the costume is embroidered flowers in beads, but on top of his head is this very complex, interconnected, you know those wheels. As a child, we would spin those wheels, and you'd see the colors move into one. So it's a very complicated headpiece of odds and end bits and pieces that look like it's just going to fall apart. So for me, this picture that he created, I just love it. It's wonderful images of what I think of as the karma that we carry around with us. That if we could see the thought forms that we habitually think, and our mean little thoughts, and also our joyous thoughts, that every day we're building a thought form, and what would it look like? So you can Google Nick Cave and take a look at his images. I just think they're beautiful, fun, intricate imaginations of consciousness. Each seems to house its own karmic systems, intricate, complex, multi-leveled, interconnecting karma. What would we look like stripped of our human body when we cross the threshold of earthly consciousness in sleep or when we die? We drop this sack of the physical and we emerge over the threshold, either in dreamless sleep consciously or after death. And there we can meet our double. And meeting our double can be a severe wake-up call. Perhaps no matter how beautiful we are on the outside, inside we are a raving, toothless hag. So karma is accumulated through deeds that we do to others and deeds that we refuse to do for others. So it's very difficult to forgive betrayals. Each time we experience a betrayal, we may feel like we have a knife in our backs. But if we do not forgive the other, we are dragging stones around behind us. And the knife, it stays put. So to forgive, for some, may be easier than for others. I'm not discussing the rapid, oh, I've forgiven them, him, her, the thing, because just scratch a little around that scab and quickly there will rise the story of what they, him, her, the thing, did to me. This is not forgiveness. This is stuffing and denial. The I must look good and make nice, appropriate face. Looking up forgiveness in my thesaurus. 1. She would not forgive him. Pardon, excuse, exonerate, absolve, make allowances for, feel no resentment towards, feel no malice toward, harbor no grudge against, bury the hatchet, let bygones be bygones, informal, let off the hook. Blame, resent. 2. You must forgive his rude conduct. Excuse, overlook, disregard. Ignore, pass over, make allowances for. Allow, turn a blind eye. Turn a deaf ear, wink at, indulge, tolerate. Or punish. So how do we work or live in the becoming of forgiveness? And the becoming of forgiveness you actually have to think about, because we don't usually forgive, is a little slang, off the cuff. It's not easy if we've been betrayed or hurt or abused or punished for being ourselves in a group, or divorce, or the litany of being human in relationship to others. So I like to gather books that others have written about suffering, and those people who have come out the other side in a freer state. So one is the Book of Forgiving, The Fourfold Path of Healing Ourselves and the World. Desmond Tutu, Significance of Forgiveness, Sergei Prokofiev. 3, The Wisdom of Forgiveness, the Dalai Lama. 4, The Art of Forgiveness, Loving Kindness and Peace, Jack Kornfield. Desmond Tutu asks us to carry around a goodly weight stone for a week or more. This gives us a reality check on the heavy weight of the unforgiven things. Making art, getting a good therapist or a co-counselor, meditation, prayer. All these are ways and means of coming to grips with and transforming our pain and suffering to lift it to another level. But Steiner recommends understanding the other, regardless of their faults. Now, this does not mean staying in situations of power over narcissistic, authoritarian groups or relationships. We, like Mary Oliver, must know when to walk to save our own lives. So forgiving others will lead to forgiving ourselves. And that means a hard and scary look inside. Barbara Brown Taylor states, quote, "Darkness is shorthand for anything that scares me, that I want no part of, either because I'm not sure that I do not have the resources to survive it, or because I do not want to find out. The absence of God is in there, along with the fear of dementia and the loss of those nearest and dearest to me. So is the melting of the polar ice caps, the suffering of children, and the nagging question of what will it feel like to die. If I had my way, I would eliminate everything from chronic back pain to the fear of the devil from my life and the lives of those I love. If I could just find the right night lights to leave on. At least I think I would. The problem is this. When despite all my best efforts, the lights have gone off in my life, literally or figuratively, take your pick, plunging me into the kind of darkness that turns my knees to water. Nonetheless, I have not died. The monsters have not dragged me out of bed and taken me back to their lair. The witches have not turned me into a bat. Instead, I have learned things in the dark that I could never have learned in the light. Things that have saved my life over and over again. So there is really only one logical conclusion. I need darkness as much as I need light." End of quote. If we can see ourselves truly, faults and goodness, criticalness and fairness, envy and kindness, actually a practice of the virtues, has long been the turned down pages of many a forgiver in training, the 7 virtues, also called the 7 contrary virtues or 7 heavenly virtues. The concept of the 7 capital virtues has been an aspect of Catholic faith for several centuries, having gained recognition and popularity in the Middle Ages. This list of 7 virtues is a set of virtues which are counter the temptation to succumb to the 7 capital sins, or the 7 deadly sins. For this reason, they are sometimes also called the 7 contrary virtues. They represent the opposite of the 7 deadly sins. The list of the 7 virtues stems from the subject matter of an epic poem written by an early Christian poet, Aurelius Prudentius Clemens, at the end of the 4th century. The poem, Psychomachia, meaning the battle of souls, is an allegory which describes the 7 virtues defeating 7 vices. The 7 contrary or capital virtues are as follows. Humility. Humility is the virtue that counters pride. As pride leads to other sins, true humility clears a path for holiness. Pride is a sin based on undue and inappropriate appreciation of one's worth. Conversely, the virtue of humility is about modest behavior, selflessness, and the giving of respect. Liberality. Liberality or generosity is the virtue that is counter to greed, the sin of immoderate desire for earthly things. The virtue of liberality is focused not merely on the appropriate concern regarding one's earthly things, but furthermore on generosity and a willingness to give freely and without request for commendation. Self-restraint, or the dated term chastity. Chastity is the counter virtue to the sin of lust. Chastity, or self-restraint, embraces a moral wholesomeness and purity, and in both thought and actions treats God's gift of sexuality with due reverence and respect. Gentleness, or meekness. Meekness or patience is the virtue that counters the sin of unjust anger, also called wrath or rage, where the sin of wrath is about quick temper and unnecessary vengeance. The virtue of meekness or gentleness focuses on patiently seeking an appropriate resolution to conflicts and the ability to forgive and show mercy. Temperance. The virtue of temperance or abstinence counters the sin of gluttony. To be gluttonous is to overindulge. On the opposite hand, the virtue of temperance is centered on self-control and moderation. Kindness. Kindness, or brotherly or sisterly love, or love for one's neighbor, is the virtues that counters the sin of envy. Envy, in contradiction to God's law of love, is manifest in a person's sorrow and distress over the good fortune of another person. Conversely, kindness and brotherly love or sisterly love is manifest in the unprejudiced, compassionate, and charitable concern for others. Perseverance. Diligence. Diligence or persistence is the virtue which acts as a counter to the sin of sloth. Sloth as a capital sin refers to laziness in the matters of faith, but also laziness in the physical or in our emotional or even in our thinking life. Being diligent in matters of the spiritual can combat laziness, and this virtue is manifest in appropriately zealous attitudes toward living and sharing the faith. When I discovered the virtues and vices during my master's degree at JFK University while working with the Sophia installation, they were truly an answer to my prayers. You can see deities' dialogues and dreams, extraordinary conversations with ordinary people on my website, Christina West Art. Forgiveness, I have found, is a journey, a practice, a patience, an expedition, a parabolic conversation, unlocking the Rubik's cube of my consciousness and trying to live into the consciousness of others. When I was at the 2-week course at Esalen with Michael Harner from the shamanic training in 1995, all hell broke loose because I had the audacity at Esalen to tell a man that while we were in an all-woman hot tub, he could go over to the next one where all the guys were. Well, I sensed a predator, and eventually that was what was discovered about this man. I was protecting myself and the other women in that hot tub. But there is this new word that is meaningless: political correctness. And the crap, if I may say so, hit the fan. The guy came in the next day with his 6-foot staff with a giant crystal on top and brought the entire workshop down because he demanded it. Michael Harner was put off all our teaching because we came to an absolute stop to assuage this man's hurt pride. My roommate, a professor of our anthropology, said, "For heaven's sake, Michael, what are some of the forgiveness ceremonies you've witnessed?" This led to a very simple ceremony. One person stood in the center of the circle, and any one of the 75 to 150 participants stood in a spiral around the person in the center. Everyone had their rattle. Whoever had something to say to the person in the center came up and stood facing each other. They would say briefly something and then complete the conversation with, "I forgive you. Will you forgive me?" And this was all the time with rattling going on. Then the person in the center would say, "I forgive you. Will you forgive me?" Now there I had to listen to what this man who was upset with me had to say. But there were other men waiting to speak to me in that spiral line. Oh, my heart sank. I didn't even know them. How could they have an issue with me? But when they came up to me, each lovely man said something like, "You have every right to sit in a hot tub with women only. You have the right to ask for what you want. And from some women, you are a very brave woman. I would never do what you did." So that is a picture of traditional people's forgiveness ceremony. People who had to live together, for they lived in small groups as what we call tribes. And you and I were all in the soup together. And them that did that, we all make mistakes. We use other people to get what we want. We're unfair to some. We curry favor with others. We do the one-upmanship thing. We step on those weaker. You're in and you're out. And most of us want to be in the in club. Hopefully, after trial and error, like children in school, we learn that we must take care of ourselves. We must learn to protect our tender hearts, but not by refraining from love. We all get hurt. Some can become porcupines, others badgers. Some hide away and are rarely seen, and others continue to open their sore, tender hearts once more to new possibilities. Oh, friends of God, let me be in the latter group, loving and opening, understanding for you and me, brother and sister. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this podcast, there's plenty others. They're free. You can sign up so that I can send you an email the next time I do a blog, and you'll get notified when the next podcast comes out. That's Christina West Art, Kristena West, Christina West Art. Thanks so much for listening. Let's get creative.